Hello and welcome to the LLG vlog once again. And you're with me, Dennis Hall, LLG's Bulletin Editor. And as usual, I'm joined by Helen Bennett, LLG's Executive Director of Policy and Governance. How are you today, Helen?
Well, look, Dennis, the sun's out. We've had a nice run of sun. Long may it
Yep.
continue.
And it is here. And, I'm going to bring something up that perhaps has got through the media with relatively little attention. It's the Casey Commission on Adult Social Care. It's a major review that the government announced back in January. But the meat has been put on the bones, as they say, as the terms of reference were announced last week. So a plan for setting out the implementation of a national care service and wider reforms to the adult social care sector in England is now clearly underway as part of this newly launched government commission. Now, the commission was officially launched this week, that's to say the 29th of April, and it is understood that Baroness Casey has already met with people with lived experience of the care sector. Now, the Commission, which will report directly to the Prime Minister, aims to start a national conversation about what adult social care should deliver for citizens and build consensus with the public on how best to meet the current and future needs of the population. But Helen, there's a lot of background to this commission. It started back in January, or was announced in January. What have you got on the background, and what is the plan behind all of this?
Well, as I understand it, Dennis, that we've got two phases, and they're contained in the terms of reference, so they're available for people to have a look at. But I'll talk about the first phase. I think the first phase of the commission will focus on how the government can make the most of existing resources to improve people's lives over the medium term. And as part of this, it will set out the plan for how to implement a national care service, which was a government manifesto commitment, actually.
Yes.
And the government said this plan should be completed in 2026. So that's not very far away. And the first phase of the commission will also examine what changes are needed to improve funding flows in social care and to improve quality and productivity in the sector. And the commission's work on medium-term reform will, I understand, be a data-driven deep dive into the current systems, the government said. So let's hope the data holds up, because we know that there's difficulties with data. And I think finally it will focus specifically on existing funding for local authority adult social care services, which we know is a major concern, and also the NHS funding for services.
There's a lot in this, Helen, for us.
Right.
Yes, there's a lot in this for us, isn't there, Helen? Because the current arrangements are often joint arrangements between local authorities and the NHS. There are also scrutiny arrangements, governance questions, procurement. So these things really do matter and underpin much of what the Commission will look at. Now, you've already mentioned, indeed, that there are two phases to the Commission's work. And the second phase of the Commission will focus on the longer-term recommendations for the transformation of adult social care in England. And as you say, there will be a deadline of 2028. Now, it doesn't seem a long time, but it seems that the reactions from others, as we'll come on to discuss later, are that perhaps it should come sooner than this because of the funding gap, the increased pressures and demands, and the lack of additional funding that's committed under the government's current financial rules. But back to the phasing, the second phase will build upon the recommendations from the first phase, as you'd expect, and look at the care model needed to address, and as the recent report says, to address demographic change and discuss alternative models for the future. And it's interesting, Baroness Casey will lead the work independently of the Department of Health and Social Care, and will work closely with other government departments, including the Treasury and the Ministry for Housing. And let's hope she will work closely too with local authorities for all of the reasons that I've mentioned. Now, I wonder now what people have been saying about the Commission. There was a recent parliamentary report that published a paper again last week, and I think you have the results of what they've been saying.
Yes, it's quite an interesting report, actually. And I mean, obviously, there's a big focus on costs, and it talks about the costs of inaction including 2 million people aged 65 and over, and I think 1.5 million people of working age not getting the care that they need. And the parliamentary report says that millions more are getting poor care, and there are huge avoidable financial pressures placed on the NHS and local authorities. And this is what sometimes people forget, I think. Social care has been propped up, they say, by an army of over 1.5 million unpaid carers. And there are lots and lots of unpaid carers. We know that. And they refer to this as equivalent to a second NHS dentist who provide more than 50
indeed.
hours of care weekly, often quitting jobs for loved ones who've bore the brunt of the system's failure. And this report came out just days after the formal launch of a 3-year independent commission into adult social care, as we said, led by Casey.
Now, some have been saying about this commission, well, what is there to discover by further debates and discussions? Is the commission going to follow what in effect have been well-trodden paths to debates, and is it really just putting things off? Now, importantly, as we've identified with the latest announcement, the Casey Review's terms of reference have been published. And I think this is the central issue that, for me, is in this set of terms of reference. And some will be disappointed by this. Others will wonder what it means. But the Casey's review of the term of reference states explicitly that it must be affordable and stay within government's existing spending limits for the remainder of the Parliament. And this has triggered fears among reformers and those interested in this sector at what possible changes can arise. Will they be underpowered? Will they be underfunded? Because many commentators have been saying, many who are concerned with adult social care reform feel that money and the lack of funding is at the heart of the matter. And we'll come on to discuss what others have been saying. But back to the MP's report that was published coterminously with the announcements regarding the terms of reference. The MP's report concludes, the moral case for reform has never been stronger, but this must be accompanied by a robust financial case. Without this, the MPs fear that the reforms that come out of the Casey Commission will be doomed to failure, leaving everyone continuing to suffer under the current unsustainable system. I think there may be something in that sentiment, frankly. But Helen, I know you've been looking at what others have been saying, and I think the Association of District Directors of Social Services have had some particular comments about what's being done by the government.
Yeah, it paints a bleak picture, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean,
does.
ADAS has responded. Obviously, I think we'd expect to the announcement of a new social care commission. Melanie Williams, she's the president of ADAS, and she's welcomed the announcement of a new independent commission. But what she says is what is needed now more than ever, with record numbers of people seeking support, that the driver needs to happen and move forward. Obviously, she says that ADAS is ideally placed to make a substantial contribution to the crucial work. But as I've said, she highlights that the timescales announced are too long, and that tangible changes until 2028 is just too far in the distance.
Yes.
And they worry that continuing to tread water, will in that intervening period will be very detrimental to people's health and well-being, Dennis.
Indeed. And earlier comments when the commission was first announced reflect many of these things. The Councillor Martin Tett, the adult social care spokesman for the County Councils Network, again pointed out that over 2 decades there's been a lack of consensus. There's been recognition that there's been unfunded costs and a lack of cross-party support that has led to this issue going on and on. And he says that in order to reform the sector and for it to be a success, it is vital that the voice of local government is heard. Local government understands the issues to be debated. Yeah. And local government needs to understand what role it will have in this new national care service if it's created. And he went on, and this was back in January when, as I said, the initial commission was announced. He says it's imperative that this review looks at looks at addressing all parts of the social care system, and obviously is concerned about the role of local government, county
Yeah.
councils in particular. And this means it must have a wider scope than just looking at care costs for individuals who are not eligible for state care.
Well, that's
I
right.
think,
And I
yes,
think, you know, he also made the interesting point that the purpose of the National Care Service is vague and ill-defined at the present.
yes,
And perhaps there is merit in going back and looking at that so everybody understands exactly what strategically is trying to be achieved so that that can be played out at operational levels. But everybody comes back against the sustainable funding. And I think that is the difficulty here, whilst the public sector is under so much
indeed.
pressure.
It is a central thing. In fact, that's the reason I put this on the slate this week, really, because it really is one of the issues across a range of other financial issues concerning social care, children and SEND that destabilize, because these issues create huge funding gaps that are being unserviced in effect. There's such financial instability. There's a lack of sustainability in terms of these services. And this underpins the whole question of how local government deals with the gaps that have huge gaps in finance that have emerged, that raises the question of what other services can local authorities provide. It underpins governance stability too. Clearly, very important questions here. And I've mentioned it earlier, the role of local authorities needs to be carved out of this commission. I've mentioned how there's a whole raft of joint working arrangements within local authorities. Where will scrutiny sit in relation to a national care service, the governance, the joint arrangements, the local authority role? Lawyers need to be at the heart of dealing with all of these aspects, as they normally are, of course, but they have an interest in looking at this commission and ensuring that the local authority voice is heard.
Well, absolutely. I mean, are we looking at new inspection regimes,
Yeah,
transparency expectations? I mean, surely they've got to follow. You've mentioned governance. I mean, this is all on top of the government's reorganisation and devolution agenda. How's that going to sit alongside everything? That's going to have to be
yes.
streamlined at the same time so that it's coterminous. It's a great ambition, isn't it? We all want
It is.
reform.
Yeah. And you raise an interesting question there. At what level of the new devolved arrangements will this sit? Will it be at the combined level? Will it be at county level? What arrangements will be in place? You raise an interesting question on that. And it would be interesting, and I would welcome members' views on all of the matters that we've raised in relation to this. Are our members encouraging their local authorities to be involved in this process, to shape what might happen? Be an interesting thing to look further at.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the forum on our website is always open to our membership to post their views as well.
And as members will expect, we will keep on top of this and have further discussions during the course of the Commission until it makes its conclusions. So, Helen, that's an interesting issue that we've raised, but it's an ongoing one, so we'll keep ahead of it. Thank you for joining me once again today, Helen.
Always a pleasure, Dennis. Thank you.